Last night was a fairly significant moment in the NBA season, as we saw both LeBron James's season and Damian Lillard's season end. And in a sense, these two are complete opposite. While LeBron James got injured at the wrong time, had his supporting cast get injured in the wrong time, with players like KCP, Dennis Schroeder, and Anthony Davis getting injured right before the NBA playoffs and then coming back and trying to piece it all together and face off against the number 2 seed, Damian Lillard was found in a situation that he's fairly familiar with. And I think he's starting to realize this as a never-ending revolving door, and I think he might be a little frustrated by that. So what's going on, guys? Your boy Mike here. Real quick, I want to let you guys know I'm giving away a pair of Apple AirPod Maxes to anyone that follows me on Instagram once we hit 50,000 Instagram followers. And of course, we're giving away a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on the Laced Up Podcast channel. A link to that's in the description down below or in the pinned comment. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro.
We didn't win the championship, so obviously where we are now isn't good enough. I don't know what a shakeup looks like or what changes will be made or could be made. But obviously, as is, it wasn't good enough. We came up short against a team without their starting point guard and shooting guard. Will Barton didn't play, and Jamal Murray didn't play. And we came up short, so obviously where we are isn't good enough to win the championship if it's not good enough for us to get out of a first round series with two of their best 3 or 4 players not on the floor.
Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? If you guys happen to be avid listeners of the Laced Up Podcast featuring myself, Get Like Coop, and Mike Korzemba, in the last episode, we discussed Damian Lillard, and I'm going to put a link to the clip at the very end of the end screen if you guys want to check that out. And in that clip, there's just a lot of genuine confusion and at least a little bit of sadness whenever it comes to players like Damian Lillard or a player like OKC Russell Westbrook, in the sense that it appears as though loyalty, at least in today's NBA landscape, is rarely ever rewarded. Yes, there are times where a player gets drafted to a poverty franchise, and through some stroke of sheer luck, that terrible franchise that's been subpar for at least the better part of the previous 2 decades happens to put together a phenomenal team around said player, and he ends up winning multiple championships. And what I'm referring to is Steph Curry. Yeah, the Golden State Warriors weren't necessarily a poverty franchise, but they weren't really a relevant franchise except for one remarkable run when they took out the number 1 seeded Dallas Mavericks around a core of Baron Davis, Steven Jackson, Matt Barnes, Jason Richardson. You get what I'm saying. Or if you take a look at Kyrie Irving's instance, he was drafted number 1 overall by the Cleveland Cavaliers the year after they drafted Dion Waiters, and the year after that, they pretty much threw away a pick on Anthony Bennett before drafting Andrew Wiggins and trading him for Kevin Love because LeBron James decided in 2014 that he's coming home. And as a result, through the dominance of that big 3 in one of probably my favorite NBA finals of the past decade, Kyrie Irving was able to win a NBA championship with a franchise that you typically wouldn't win a NBA championship with, and that's the Cleveland Cavaliers. In Damian Lillard's case, however, that is unfortunately not as feasible as you may think. And believe it or not, the Portland Trailblazers have a significantly better history than the other 2 franchises that I mentioned, in the sense that they've come significantly closer to being a contending franchise despite being in a small market. Yes, I know the closest they got to sniffing NBA Finals success was when Michael Jordan made it rain from 3 and hit him with a shrug almost 30 years ago, but this is a team that almost pieced it together in the late 2000s after drafting Brandon Roy, then LaMarcus Aldridge, well, trading for LaMarcus Aldridge on draft day, because I know someone's going to mention how they didn't technically draft LaMarcus Aldridge, and then eventually drafted what was supposed to be the most transcendent center in NBA history in Greg Oden. And unfortunately, those three, when they played together, they had a record of 50-12, but unfortunately, they only played 62 games together. It's probably one of the biggest and most underrated what-ifs in NBA history. And that's the challenge that Damian Lillard has had to deal with over the past near decade, ever since getting drafted by the Portland Trail Blazers. Yes, the Trail Blazers are his team. Yes, the Trail Blazers are devoted to doing whatever it takes to put a good supporting cast around him. And yes, he has delivered significant playoff moments for us on countless occasions. But unfortunately for Damian Lillard, he's never been in a situation where he was able to finally make that run to the NBA Finals, and he's a player that I believe all of us are rooting for. That step back three on Paul George was probably one of the coldest shots I've ever seen. And while Damian Lillard typically reaffirms his commitment to Portland over and over again, he was singing a slightly different tune after losing to the Denver Nuggets last night, which is kind of ironic because bear in mind, before we even get into any of the speculation, bear in mind that Damian Lillard's contract does expire at the end of this year, but he signed a contract extension on July 6, 2019, and that's set to expire in 2025 when he's the age of 35, meaning this would have been the perfect time for Damian Lillard at the end of his age 30 season to do something similar as to what Kevin Garnett did. Yes, I gave this city my best years, but unfortunately we couldn't make it work. Now let me go and spend my remaining 2 or 3 productive years and team up with some other star players to potentially chase a championship before my career ends. And contractually, that is just not possible. But the reason I'm making this video is take a look at this. We're going to have a lot of Lakers speculation this year, guys. So I highly recommend you leave a like on this video and subscribe and turn on my notifications just to make sure my videos pop up in your feed. But tell me if this isn't strange. The moment the Lakers lost last night, like literally the same time they lost, Damian Lillard posts this picture onto Instagram, and he quoted the late Nipsey Hussle saying, "How long should I stay dedicated? How long till opportunity meets preparation?" This can be interpreted in many ways, so if you interpret it differently than I do, please go ahead and let me know your interpretation in the comments. But my interpretation of this is a man that is hopelessly dedicated and obsessed with his craft, and he feels like he has never been placed in an opportunity to succeed. Yes, the Portland Trailblazers built a team that could make it to the playoffs, but the Trailblazers made it into the playoffs as a 6th seed based around the same core that they've had for the past couple of years. Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, and they did their best to make some slick trades in order to potentially get Dame more help, like trading Gary Trent for Norman Powell, which in my opinion, I still don't understand, to be honest. And that's before I bring in some really good moves that they made by adding Robert Covington, Derrick Jones Jr., and his Cantor, and unfortunately, none of these players ended up making a difference. So now you have a 30-year-old Damian Lillard going on to his age 31 season, and this is the first year of a brand new contract extension, so clearly he is committed to Portland. Maybe he's having some remorse. Maybe he's regretting that slightly. Look, there's going to be so much speculation about potential star players that the Lakers might go out to try to acquire. There's going to be so much speculation about potential players that could be traded or are on the market. So this kind of reminds me of the James Harden video I made last year when the Houston Rockets got bounced out in the second round versus the Los Angeles Lakers. And it was really funny because a lot of people hated that video. They thought it was way too early for such a video. And granted, I did have James Harden in a Philadelphia 76ers jersey in that video, but here's the only way this makes sense. If the Portland Trailblazers really just want to show Damian Lillard love and appreciation the way Sam Presti showed Russell Westbrook appreciation by trading him where he wanted to, then they could trade Damian Lillard to a potential contender and gut out that team of its future assets the same way the OKC Thunder did. Now, if that was to happen, I don't think the Los Angeles Lakers would be a feasible destination for Damian Lillard. I mean, after all, what draft picks do the Los Angeles Lakers have? But that's not necessarily the only move the Portland Trailblazers can make. They could try to bundle CJ McCollum with one of the other aforementioned role players that I already mentioned and try to get Damian Lillard another star. But to be honest, if I'm the Portland Trailblazers, I would probably hold on to Damian Lillard until a team made me an offer that I couldn't refuse, which is what happened to the OKC Thunder. They didn't originally want to trade Russell Westbrook, but when the Los Angeles Clippers approached them and said, hey, you see that Paul George guy? We'll give you 7 first-round picks for him, then yeah, you're probably going to think, okay, this is a good time to rebuild. So in the event that was to happen to the Portland Trailblazers, then of course I could see them trading Damian Lillard. But the thing is, Damian Lillard's situation isn't that far off from James Harden's, only in the sense that he did recently sign a contract extension, whereas James Harden had 2 years left on his contract. James Harden was around the same age when he got traded to the Brooklyn Nets, and he had to do some pretty aggressive stuff to get that trade to the Brooklyn Nets. Let me know in the comment section down below, what would you do if you're Damian Lillard? What would you do if you're the Portland Trailblazers? Would you try to build a team around Dame, or would you decide to cut your losses and try to accelerate your rebuild? There is word that the New York Knicks have already called the Portland Trailblazers about Damian Lillard, so that's something to keep an eye on if you are a New York Knicks fan. And if you have any more to add on to the situation, guys, I have a Discord in the description down below where I'm active and I like chatting with you guys in, and it's a fairly small Discord. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.